Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to another episode of Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. Diving in, of course, this week, today's episode, Season 1 of Agent Carter, plus the Marvel one-shot for Agent Carter, which actually got things sort of rolling for the series. So, bunch of fun stuff, a lot of 1946 action, costumes, characters, and of course, joining me as always, the most awesome fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. right here. We've got our little group. We're going to start things off here with Rob Stone from Smirking Gun Reviews.
What is up, everybody? Yes, we, as promised, we're going to be talking about Agent Carter, something that I'm very familiar with right now. Maybe a little too familiar, and we're continuing with season 2 on my channel. But let's get into it so we can talk about a lot of stuff. It's only 8 episodes in a one-shot, but there's a lot in there. So I take it away to the guy right below me, Mr. Don Willie. Don.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? So glad to be here talking about Agent Carter Season 1. And as you can see, I have my Captain America regalia with me. And I've also got, look what we have here. Is that Black Widow from the Red Room? No. Who was, also part of these guys in the comic books every now and then? So yeah. So we are going to take it over to our own resident Agent Carter, Agent Corrie.
Hey guys, glad to be here. I got the hat. I got the secret compact so I can spy around corners. It's all good. It's all good. I'm ready to dive in.
Excellent. And of course, we've got people joining us live in the chat. Thank you to everyone. Sefa, always in with our shows. You are the fan of Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. We love you. All right. So I do want to do brief little reminders, of course, while we are going through season 1 today and the one shot. If you really want to deep dive into Carter's backstory, into each episode, I'm going to send you right over to Smirking Gun Reviews with this person right here and this person right here doing background reviews of season 1 of Agent Carter. They got them all loaded up. They're going right into season 2. These are big, giant discussions. So much info, so much. They're just tasty little morsels of fandom. So if this just whets your appetite, I highly recommend you guys jumping over to Smirking Gun Reviews and checking out those Agent Carter summations. Now, next month, we are going to be returning back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. for Season 3. So keep an eye out for when that is going to drop. And as always, please like and subscribe if you do enjoy this review, and that way you will get any notifications if you hit that bell for all of our upcoming Fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. reviews. All right, so with all of that out of the way, we are going to, of course, dive into a little bit of background here for our Agent Carter. Excuse me. I'm getting a little bit blind here, folks. All right. So while Peggy Carter may have a bit of history within Marvel Comics, and again, you can check out Smirking Gun Reviews, Agent Carter episodes 1 and 2 review with Rob and Corrie here for a little bit more on that. Audiences were first introduced to the MCU version of Margaret Elizabeth Carter, is played by Haley Atwell in the 2001 film Captain America: The First Avenger. Here, Agent Carter is a member of the SSR, or Strategic Scientific Reserve, assigned to Project Rebirth and the hunt for the first recipient of Erskine's super soldier serum. This, of course, is where she meets a scrawny little Steve Rogers, someone else easily overlooked by others because of his appearance, but with a belief in what is right and a selfless dedication to fight for others that matched her own. Now, as Captain America, Rogers literally depended on her as his moral compass and drive to persevere. Their love, while maybe never consummated in the traditional sense, was born of respect and admiration, and is perhaps why it is one of the most memorable of the entire MCU. As a character, Carter was a big hit with audiences, not only because of Atwell's amazing performance, but Peggy's personification as a strong and self-assured, a hero herself, the woman in a man's world who's more capable than the men around her. So when, in August of 2011, just a month after Captain America release, Marvel Studios announced it was going to release a few short self-contained films titled Marvel One-Shots, a Peggy Carter story set after the events of Captain America was one of the ideas floated around. It was with the Blu-ray release of Iron Man 3 in 2013, the producers finally greenlit the Agent Carter story. Atwell had apparently been very impressed with the one-shot Item 47 that followed the stories after the events of the Avengers, and signed on hoping to show more of her abilities not really seen in the Captain America films. Atwell spent 3 days with the stunt team prior to shooting, and they shot the whole one-shot in 5 days with no storyboards. The stunt scenes were all pre-shot so they could show the actors ahead of time, and the directors and cameramen and writers used stand-ins to plan every shot beforehand so they could maximize what they could get in the period that they had. It starred Atwell as Agent Carter in a post-World War II world, now an unappreciated SSR agent regulated to coffee and filing. That all changes one night when she takes a mission behind her boss's back, played beautifully by Mr. Bradley Whitford, a mission several of the male agents had already failed. Ass-kicking and victory ensue. And this all leads to Howard Stark proclaiming Peggy will run the newly created S.H.I.E.L.D. It also featured the return of Dominic Cooper as Howard Stark and a mid-credits scene with Deal McDonough as Dum Dum Dugan, mesmerized over these new things called bikinis. The finished short was a preview, actually, at 2013's Comic-Con before the Blu-ray release, and was well received by audiences and critics alike. This led directly to ABC bypassing a pilot and ordering Agent Carter direct to series in May of 2014 for an 8-episode run to take place during Agents of S.H.I.E.L.'s mid-season break the following year. It premiered January 6, 2015, and ran through February 26th, featuring James Darcy as Edwin Jarvis, Chad Michael Murray as Jack Thompson, veteran actor Shea Wiggum as Chief Dooley, and of course, Anver Jokai as Daniel Souza. Episodes 1 and 2 aired back-to-back with 6.9 million viewers, 10.6 million including DVR. And for the season, it averaged just over 7 million viewers, placing it 47th amongst the broadcast series for that year. Reception was generally favorable, with a 95% Rotten Tomatoes rating and a 73 out of 100 on Metacritic. Atwell again received high praise, even by those who gave less than glowing reviews, with the Peggy Jarvis dynamic a standout in the show. The second season was announced May 7th of 2015. So, little bit of backstory there on our Agent Carter. So, I wanted to sort of kick things off today with the one shot. And you can, if you want to bring in your opinions from Carter and feel with the expectations going into that, sing from Captain America, go on. That's let's get into kind of all of that. Carter from Captain America. Suddenly we've got our one shot. And then we see really her first singular adventure. Corrie, let's kick things off with you. What are your impressions of the one shot and Agent Carter as a whole?
I enjoyed it. I kind of came to it a little bit later in the game because it was released on the Iron Man Blu-ray and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I think what I liked most about it is how it kind of foreshadowed how they're going to use language to show how the men around Peggy use descriptors to strip her of her, I guess, authority in the situation. They use a lot of terminology towards her that's something you would use to talk to your girlfriend. Mm-hmm. As opposed to someone you work with. So we start to see things like her being called sweetie or darling. And then at the end, we kind of get that gut punch of she's seen as only Cap's love interest. Like the only reason she's here is because she's grieving and they're pitying her. It has nothing to do with her abilities, which are in most cases higher than the people she's working with.
Mhm.
No concern about, you know, her record with during the war and towards the war effort. So we kind of start to see how the writers of the show like jumped off of that point of, okay, how can we show how much things have changed after the war and how basically women have lost their credibility because the war is over, we no longer need you, and so we're going to put you back on the shelf and expect the men to come back and continue their role, which, you know, we went into in depth on our review on
Mhm.
Smirking Gun. So that was kind of neat. There's the quote of "The war is over, we'll handle the rough stuff." So then this like idea of, you know, you're a woman, it's like you don't do this. Go file things. Be the secretary.
Right.
And we learn that her expertise is actually in the field. So it's like hiring a doctor, and then like, no, we just want you to, you know, clean the floors.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm a doctor. I'm specialized in this. This is what I do. So they kind of they're not using her to her full potential.
Well, I think what was kind of good from carrying a lot of that same feel that they had for Captain America is you did have the same writers of Captain America heavily involved in both the one shot and the series, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, who did, you know, wanted to give that kind of different feel of her in the world. Again, not only was she disrespected and find respect while working with Captain America, and that was, again, part of their mutual appeal, but now she's back in the world, like you said, a doctor asked to clean floors.
Essentially. One thing that was kind of neat is the coordinates that she gets on the call at night.
Mhm.
You know, 40.6518 degrees north, blah, blah, blah. If you actually plug that in, it is in Brooklyn, New York. And
Nice.
yeah, so when I looked it up, it gave me a strange address, but I may have inputted the data incorrectly. Someone else had looked it up online and screenshotted the image, and apparently it's 689 Rogers Avenue in Brooklyn. So I thought that was kind of nice.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
So wait, oh wow. So quick side note then, that is not too far from that's not too far from where my ex-girlfriend lives. You said 689 Rogers Avenue?
Yep.
Holy hell. Wow. So now I have to ride by there just to see, and you know, hopefully I don't run into the ex while
Well, just stay away from, you know, Hydra things that blow up and all that. Apparently it's all in that area.
Sure, right. Bright day is what we're looking for right here. Bright, well-lit day. That is awesome. That's real cleverness on their part.
Yeah. And then another thing that was I thought was neat, they used proper terminology. So when they're calling in the coordinates, it's 73.9er instead of 73.9, which I'm like, yes, they're using proper lingo. I'm so happy. And the music that's playing on the radio when she kicks the guy through the window, it's a song called Deep in the Night, and you assume it's an older vintage piece. It reminds me a little bit of Mr. Sandman, the same kind of approach, but it's actually a modern musician named Lori Linner, and she does like vintage sounding music. And so apparently she's worked with some of the bigs in the industry. She opened for Bob Hope or something like that. I'll double check that. But her music was used in the one shot, and then we hear it later in Agent Carter season 1 in Bridge and Tunnel.
Nice.
So
Nice.
yeah, so that was kind of neat. I love the joke where they're like, "You're not from around here." She says, "Oh no, I'm from Brooklyn, actually." So that's great how she's kind of taken on Steve's identity in a way. Like she takes pieces from his past and uses them in her work.
Right. That is nice.
That's cool. And I guess the other thing was that kind of gut punch of not even Captain America's old flame.
Oh, yeah.
And we see that later on in Agent Carter season 1, where there's a lot of like very derogatory comments made about her and a lot of sexist jokes made about her, especially with regards to her relationship with Steve Rogers, which makes me want to punch somebody. So
very much holding her in the in that position of unappreciated and disrespected, despite her quite capable abilities.
And when she does do well, she's being chastised for not following protocol or not letting the men handle it. And we hear when the guys come back from their first attempt on the mission, it's kind of in the background, but they're saying something about like there was a shot fired. Where did it come from? It came from nowhere. So obviously their mission didn't go so hot. And what kind of shocked me is they're working on this big case and the boss leaves in the middle of the case to go drinking with the guys, leaves Peggy there and she assumes she's going to be invited to drink with them. And they're like, no, just do the files. Look at the cases. We'll see you tomorrow. And it's because of his incompetency as the leader of the group that she gets her opportunity to one-up him. So I wonder if there's kind of a double layer to that, where he's angry because she's successful, but he's also angry because the reason she was successful was because he wasn't doing his job.
He's a chief agent. His job is to have drinks with his men. That's how he sees it.
Yeah.
Don, what about yourself? What was your impression off of that Agent Carter one shot?
Well, listen, I thought it was a real kind of awesome thing there. We got the dame from England coming over here kicking a lot of ass. It was it was a little disrespectful how she kind of upstaged the boss and went over his head like that and stuff. Look, she's there supposed to be getting coffee, but she decided she wanted to take things in her own hands. I understand she's got a little bit of field experience there. Running behind Captain America's shield and all that, but sometimes you got to take things in your own hands, and if you want to, get through the glass ceiling and make your way in life. So, she saw an opportunity and she took it. She did things the American way. It's how you're supposed to do things, right? So, I was very, very excited to see her go in and grab the whole Zodiac serum there and come back and kind of give her boss a dressing down, because he kind of deserved it. You don't really see that for too many bras out there these days. So kudos to her. Now let me stop with the obvious chauvinism. Look, I loved it. Haley Atwell is a fantastic actress. I thought they did a great job in portraying the era in which she came from and the obstacles that she faced. And, the one shot was 15 minutes, but in that 15 minutes, they showed, not only what she was up against, but how much more capable she was than the other people around her and how much she was slept on. And even after she completed the mission that they could not complete, it's like, recommend 3 to 5 agents. She went in there solo, handled business, and then came back and did everything. And oh my God, we had a Hydra infiltration. Yeah, could it be that
someone took out D.
Oh
no!
Oh wow! Look,
check the windows. Snipers.
But the point is that this was written in a way that that I wish there would have been a way to expound upon this and possibly give her her own movie. But the fact that we were able to get a TV show from it was good as well, and it also helped to flesh things out. Now, I'm guessing from the way that things look, I would imagine that the that this was supposed to take place. I guess Agent Carter, the TV show, would have taken place before this one shot. Unless, multiverse.
Yeah, the timeline don't. Now that we have the show, it kind of doesn't add up because I don't know, because she's not running Shield.
Right. I mean, well, it's still SSR in season 1, so there might be a possibility that the one shot, like where they could have led up to the events of the one shot, because and we'll get into it when we get into to the show proper, but I still don't think that even by the end of, if we would have gotten more seasons, let's say we would have gotten 4 or 5 seasons, I think the way that it would have played out would have been, she would have got a new boss every year, and every year that boss would have been a dick, and then finally at the end of it, we'd be like, okay, cool, now we're at where Agent Carter finally gets to go to Shield with Howard Stark. I hope now that we have Disney Plus that there is a possibility that we can get a continuation, and that we get Agent Carter. I mean, they haven't announced anything, but like, damn, it was like golden opportunity, because they don't have to worry about the numbers the same way as on network television. And I mean, look, you brought back Haley Atwell and James Darcy for Endgame, so Edwin Jarvis is canon.
Yeah. Plus, they both want to work. Well, I can't speak for the actor who plays Jarvis, but Haley Atwell has said multiple times that she would love to come back and do another season.
So yeah, I mean, listen, we need to find a way to make a petition to get Haley Atwell the show back on Disney Plus, and hopefully, I guess we're still live because we got Barbaro in the chat, and also we got Devontae Smith. So kudos, cheers to you for joining us. Hopefully, Darren will be able to get back, or else I have no idea how much longer this is going to go on, or how we would stop the show, if anything. But I guess, Rob, your turn, good sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think between Corrie and you've covered pretty much the important things about like what was actually in the one shot. My thing was that I started looking at it as a more like a business, like a 15-minute, like think about Deadpool, how Deadpool got made. Somebody did some test footage. They got Ryan Reynolds. They put it all together. It went viral. Except this is like more like, to me, like a corporate commercial. Like they put this thing together. It was super well produced. Like it was so cinematic looking. And only reason you notice after watching what I've watched 12 episodes now, the difference in production quality that the show had versus the one shot. But to me, the one shot encapsulated everything you pretty much would have seen in the entire series.
Mm-hmm.
You got Dugan showing up there occasionally, to show people, hey, guess what? This is something you could use. You've got Dominic Cooper there as Howard Stark showing you something you could use. You know that the end game for this is her work, co-running Shield. So they kind of cover what everything is going to happen in Agent Carter in one 15-minute commercial to try to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
To now see, it was made by Marvel, so to me it was like testing the waters. Do people want this according to the response? And since it was great, they run that sucker right through the series. And so I felt like it was just, and I don't know if the other one shots kind of felt like that. I don't know if like now watching Hail to the King, Was that supposed to set up something? Were they testing to see, are we going to do the Mandarin or not? But this really did feel like they were trying to show what Agent Carter, a TV series or movie, would look like. All in one thing. You got to see the action. You got to see her talk about the code breaking. You got to see the men be jerks. You got you got all of it, really. And it was just in this one little tight package that just made me go, yeah, no wonder this went to series. My only thing about it was that it just made me think more about the wasted potential that Joe had. I think it would have ended kind of like what you were saying, Don, about if it had gone 4 or 5 years, the end game would have been her going off to run S.H.I.E.L.D. Because as we know in season 1, Howard Stark does not show up saying, hey, and in charge of anything. Like he calls up there like he's running the joint. In this phone call, that would have on the show, that would have never happened. So it was kind of like they were jamming everything they could in to say, this is what you'd get. And then they started parceling it out to us in the show. And unfortunately, we never got to get to that finish line. We already know it's there. And yeah, Haley Atwell could easily come back because since she lived for so long, it doesn't matter if Haley Atwell gets older, because we just say, well, this is where the character was in this time period of her life. And just go from there. Fast forward so many years, she's in S.H.I.E.L.D. now. Disney has the potential here to really go again. And I think if Agent Carter had actually come out just a couple of years later, I think in the time period that we're living in, I think Agent Carter would have done really well. And that's why I hope, with Disney Plus that it will get, I think that if they promote it a little bit better instead of burying it, I had to look for it. Really look for it, and if they promote it more, I think more, especially to girls, and no offense, but I mean, this is an empowering show. You've got, 18 episodes of goodness for women to look up to this character. And I don't know, but that's my take on the one shot. I thought it was really well done, but it was just a really great commercial.
If I can jump in, I think I agree. I think it makes more sense if the one shot was kind of a trailer sort of commercial for the show, because logically in terms of timeline, it doesn't work if you add on the show right after. It just doesn't add up. What you were saying about it being kind of a commercial to convince, I guess, executives we should do this show, I think back to the one shot, The Consultant. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure when that came out, but was that like a tester for, say, another season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or for the first season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Who knows?
Okay. Well, sorry again, I disappeared for a moment. Some internet problems over on my end here. But you guys, as you so often do, bring us perfectly to the next point that I kind of wanted to bring up between those. The Consultant was... The one-shots were originally envisioned as self-contained stories. They were play ideas. The Consultant really is kind of like that extended scene, is basically extended the scene that was at the end of The Incredible Hulk to give it more of a contextual storyline there. That was the first one that came out, and that was attached to the Thor Blu-ray in 2011. Funny thing happened on the way to Thor's Hammer with, of course, Clark Gregg as Agent Coulson. That was actually on the Captain America Blu-ray release. And told that tiny little story in a moment of Coulson's life. Item 47 was the third one that was attached to the Avengers DVD or Blu-ray release. And that, of course, told the story of one of the Chitauri weapons that got in the hands of a couple of kids that decided to do some crimes and then had to do some time working for S.H.I.E.L.D. It's also where we had Agent Blake show up as well, was in that one. Carter was the next, and then Hail to the King afterwards. So no, they weren't intended originally to be previews for larger stories. They were meant to really be sort of self-contained. But of course, because Carter was received so well and ABC and Marvel was smart to kind of lean into Atwell's ability and drive there. It was good to take that story to series. However, Corrie, you bring up a very interesting point, which is, I don't know, to me, maybe one of the early signs of the actual division between Marvel Television and Marvel Films, because the one-shots were produced by Kevin Feige. Those were completely MCU. Agent Carter, of course, is on ABC, and that's Marvel Television, which was under Perlmutter at the time. Feige, Perlmutter, of course, didn't really get along that well. So, I mean, there was some technical stuff there, but in the opener for Agent Carter, we see a scene from the one shot.
Yeah.
There is a brief shot of during the action kicking scene through the window, which would establish that one shot within the timeline of Agent Carter. In fact, in that mission very well. In fact, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, in an interview with Collider Steve Weintraub in March of 2014, mentioned that the show would start in 1946, sort of in the middle of the timeline of the one shot. McFeely said, "We can't get her to the end of S.H.I.E.L.D. that fast. We want to stay in the world where people are disrespecting her and she's proving herself and going on missions and things like that." So they basically say it's like after the mission, but before Stark calls her, which in the one shot is the next day. I mean, that's literally Bradley Whitford coming up and saying like, "What did you do? What is this?" And the phone rings and it's Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. So while they want to sort of lean into the MCU connection, by effectively, like you said, Rob, retelling this exact story in a much bigger, broader, more in-depth, suddenly everything isn't connected. Suddenly you have an actual schism between the MCU, Marvel Films, and Marvel Television. And I think this is sort of what started all this. I mean, if we look at from a timeline standpoint, 2014, Ultron came out in 2015. So this is right in the middle of dealing with Age of Ultron and the plans for phase 3. And there might have been some thoughts of like, yeah, we can connect this, but right as that Marvel Television starts, just from the point of storytelling, we suddenly start seeing splits, even at this early stage in schism. So I don't know what, I don't know, Rob, I think you sort of said this is to you. You look at this more of a preview for the series and a retelling. Are these basically contradictory? Or do we just say that this is where the timeline split? In one timeline, Carter had one night, did an awesome agent, and became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. the next day. And another timeline,
it's the result of Steve going back in time. So the one where she's like ahead of SSR is when he dies, and the one where she's called the next day is. I mean, that doesn't work because in both of them, Steve's dead. But
no, but we could have ripples and things. I kind of like that. Don, Rob, you guys got any thoughts on the comparative realities of these two?
You know what?
Honestly.
John, let's start with you. Yeah.
Loki is supposed to be not only jumping through time, he's supposed to be jumping through different dimensions and all that stuff, right? So maybe there's a possibility where, he shows up in one timeline, it's the one shot, and the other timeline is her, going through what we see in seasons 1 and 2 of Peggy Carter. So, hey, could be.
Blame Scarlet Witch. It's like, control your power.
That's it. Worst comes to worst, blame the Maximoff girl. Rob, did you have anything else to add here?
So here's the thing. I had always thought that I had seen Agent Carter's one shot, but I hadn't until today. And unless maybe it's because I've been watching it already, but I personally just can't get past. I don't count it, to be honest with you, because I look at it and I go, and I look now, and the more that we talk about these one shots, to me they still feel like they're the studio's idea of fishing. I honestly think that even the one with Agent Blake and the two kids could have been them fishing for, hey, what about 2 new characters for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Like, let's see what people think of these 2 crazy kids who got involved and found this tech and now could work for S.H.I.E.L.D. Do people like them? It makes me think of how they insert new characters onto shows, and people can either will love or hate them, and they'll kill them off or whatever. And I just still feel watching these, and the more we talk about it, they don't feel like they're saying they're standalone, but they feel like things that they just are trying to see in a lot of ways if they could figure out how to work it into something. Even though like a strange thing happened on the way to Thor's hammer sounds more like a deleted scene. And the same thing with Hail to the King feels like a deleted scene. But a few of the others just really do feel like, let's just put it out there and see what happens. And if it doesn't happen, then we just say, hey, it's, it was a little story we wanted to tell. If it gets even more success, all of a sudden you get a TV show out of it. I think the one shot is a nice, well-produced look at what could, like if the show was like this, it probably would have been canceled sooner because it would cost a lot to make it look like this every week. But I prefer the regular show to this little thing that they gave us that I still feel like is marketing.
It was like a cinematic what if almost there. Okay. Corrie?
Just to jump off of Rob's comment, in a sense, I agree that I feel like they did an oopsie at the end where they called her off to head up S.H.I.E.L.D. or to head up SSR. Because it's too soon of a reward payoff. like she's working and then suddenly she's the head of, at the SSR with Howard.
Right.
And I wish they had maybe had Howard call up and say, hey, we're starting a new division. We want you for, this project, this important project. And then maybe everyone's going like, oh, that's such and such project. Oh man, nobody's got clearance to work on that. And then, she leaves to work on a new project. That would have given her a bit more leeway to build up to, now she's running S.H.I.E.L.D. It just seemed like it happened too fast.
Sure. And I think in that sense, that's sort of the thing. They do feel like we're sort of thinking off some ideas. What would this do? And we want to show that, Peggy's still disrespected, but don't worry, she becomes the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. And how can we do this in a quick little thing without necessarily an idea of how do you really want to build this out in the world? And perhaps that was where Marvel was. Again, mixing from phase 2 going into phase 3, how exactly are they going to make their larger worlds all connect and come together? So, excellent, man. See, y'all answer so many of my questions so much better than what I could have come up with.
Also, we got to just at least reference the guy that gets handcuffed by Peggy.
Oh, yeah.
I need you to scream. He's like, help, help. And then she decimates all the guys, and he's like, help!
Learn to count.
She's like, no, that's enough. Thank you. You could stop now.
It was a beautiful, quick summation of her character. But again, it is what got us to a series. So whether we see it as a what if or an alternate or a fishing expedition, it did get us to season 1 of Agent Carter, where we got to sort of, again, see that storyline play out. And I think a larger and more satisfying way. So, Dawn, I'm going to kick things off with you first here to sort of change our order up. Agent Carter, the series. And I don't know if you guys may have gotten into this a little bit while my internet was blowing up here a little while ago. What were your impressions, feels, summation? Kind of you spend a few minutes if you wish, but sort of a quick overview of the series and what you got out of it, how you felt maybe then and maybe versus now. Do you see it with different eyes?
Let's see. Back then, I definitely thought that it was a step up from what had been done with Agents of Shield. Even though it was a much shorter run, I thought the story was a lot tighter. I thought that um, they really set up the world a lot better. Agents of Shield did a lot of kind of hand waving certain things for like the first half of season one, and then he was like, "Oh, okay, well, now that we know what we need to do for the second half of season one," it was like, "Oh, okay." Then things got a lot tighter. Whereas this, to me, was a lot more thought out and planned from episode one to episode 8. Um, it was a little shocking because I had watched the one shot, so seeing her, in the series now, where she's being disrespected by her colleagues, there isn't a shield yet, uh, and those kind of things. It was like, all right, well, I wonder why they decided to do this, but once I followed, I was like, okay, I understand it. They're trying to bring us into the world and see how she's able to build respect, amongst people who don't really know her background. They have a certain perception of her based on, oh, she's a woman, and as far as we know, she was just the dame that was dating Captain America. You know, that's what they're thinking. So you know, and you see throughout the season where you know the men, for the most part, have come to respect her over time. Howard obviously had a lot of respect for her, but Howard is Howard, so he was a dick every now and then. Edwin, Mr. Jarvis, very very cool. And it was a little interesting because she's a double outsider, because not only is she a woman, she's also a foreigner. And the one person that she really had to relate to was the other foreigner, who we learn things about him over time, where it's like, oh man, this is kind of crazy. So like, I like the interplay that they had with Peggy and Jarvis. We see the crush that Agent Daniel Souza has on her. Uh, it's insinuated that Jack Thompson had a crush on her too. I mean, at least that's the way that everyone on the outside looking in keeps on saying, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I know you got a thing for Agent Carter there. Yeah, listen, don't get your knickers all in the bunch over Agent Carter. I see you got an eye for her." It was like, really, like, dude. I mean, like, that's not an odd way of showing that you actually are, infatuated with somebody. I've never treated a woman that I wanted to possibly date in the way that he has. But I mean, again, 1940s with that whole, oh, golly gee. And then think about it, the radio show, right? The radio show where it's not Peggy Carter, it's Betty Carter. And, oh, gee, I'm just here sewing up Captain America's undies, and oh, the Nazis are broken in. If only Captain America was here to save him. It's like, oh God, oh God, how do people fall for this? Like, that was considered to be like good storytelling back then. Oh, so yeah, I mean, look, I like a lot of period pieces. Uh, I mean, it's funny because even in Marvel's very sanitized version of reality, they still, were like, look, okay, it it wouldn't look right to people who lived through those time periods to see something on TV where Peggy Carter is automatically the boss. All the guys are listening to her and kissing her feet and all the other, good stuff. Like the women empowerment kind of thing that we saw, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, characters like a Murphy Brown or Ally McBeal or I'm trying to think of like someone else who's a fictional character who's supposed to be kind of like a boss or something. But I mean, like you get what my meaning. Like women being portrayed as being in charge in that time period.
It's not common.
Yeah, it would have automatically been called out and like, oh, no way, no how. You're not going to have a woman be, So, I mean, and even if you think about it, at the end of the one shot, it's Howard Stark that has to tell another man Peggy Carter is going to run S.H.I.E.L.D. It's not, it's not Eleanor Roosevelt calling up. Even though Eleanor Roosevelt, like anyone who knows history knows, Eleanor Roosevelt was the brains of the outfit. It's one of those things where we as a society, to a certain extent, are still dealing with these kinds of issues. But we know for a fact that it was way more prevalent back then. And so, like I said, even though a lot of what Marvel does with their storytelling is very sanitized, they at least had the courage to not shy away from that reality. And so I did find that to be very refreshing about the show. And I don't want to be long-winded, so I want to pass it off to
they have to be historically accurate in order to be taken seriously.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of the intrigue of the storyline too, is because she is in this world. I mean, and has to kind of fight her way up. I think that is, that's part of the strength of Peggy's story, and it's good that they have, again, a longer time to be able to really flesh that out, especially with the interactions with other characters and how that whole earning of respect comes. Rob, what about yourself? What were your impressions on Season Carter overall? Maybe then, maybe now, even looking back on it and what they were able to do.
Well, when it came out then, it was just to be honest, it was just another show that I watched that I liked. I liked it. Just fine. Didn't like it as much as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Because I still did, like watching it the second time, I just got really uncomfortable with so much of the male attitudes. It took a while to actually, I mean, if you watch our reviews, I mean, I agonize over the behavior of the male actors, the characters. I mean,
therapist in the middle of the
wanted
show.
To show. Hey. But it was something I always meant to go back to. And once we started doing Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and fans of S.H.I.E.L.D. and we talked about this, I got really excited. And I'm so happy that I went back to this, because a lot of this, even though I knew a lot of the big beats, I forgot all the little details. And it's all those little details that just made rewatching season one again and talking about it so exciting. It doesn't hurt that you have like an Agent Carter expert with you on every review that you do, to like make sure. I mean, because I can't even touch the level of detail that Corrie brings to our reviews. So that's also been a major help to watching this and getting through it again, because there is so much to say about Agent Carter season one, because it's so freaking relevant to what's going on today. So much of what Peggy's going through is still stuff that women have been going through still, that we shouldn't be. And it just keeps, it's like cold water to the face every time you tune in to how this is just still the same world, just the language has changed, and the overtness is different. You know, people dress things up a little nicer nowadays when they try to get away with things. Back then they didn't hide it. Now people try to hide this stuff, and it just was one of those things that made it even more enjoyable, but more on it take in on a more of a social, you know, like impact to how I don't want to be as a man. And but also it's just another great way of showing like what I loved about Captain America. Agent Carter embodies that too. Throughout season 1, she has so many of these moments of her trying to get past the mourning phase of Steve Rogers, to find out what, you know, to be who she needs to be now, but still bringing along all those ideals that he brought, you know, and what she's doing. She's basically the counterpart. This world needs a Captain America, and I think Peggy Carter is kind of like the female version of that. And it just it brings up all the things of how I wanted to be, and it's just different that it's a female instead of a male this time. But it doesn't change the fact that those ideals are good ways to be as a human being. And so rewatching this just brought all that back.
Nice. That's awesome being able to see it. But I get it. There was watching the show sometimes and watching some of the male behavior and references, and you're just like, oh God, I wish we could say that we're past that, but we're not. And it's unfortunate. Corrie, what about you? What were your impressions on seeing it at first, and then again, you getting a chance to really kind of go back and re-experience it now? What is it that Carter as a series kind of brings for you?
Oh goodness, so much. I mean, so much. I think you all touched on some great points about Carter, and I mean, obviously, I approach it as a female, and I just see an example of who I want to be as a woman. You know, like, okay, what would Agent Carter do? How would she handle this situation? And you know, she's a little bit more punch to the face approach than I am, but she's smart. She finds workarounds. She works around barriers that have been put up, and we see that a lot through the show, where, you know, she's told she can do something, or she's, you know, not given a clearance to do something, or, you know, she doesn't have the toolkit that a normal spy would have because she's not given any toolkit, and so she has to, you know, improvise. She's kind of MacGyvering her way through life. You know, it's like I don't have, you know, the backup of the SSR, so I take my little handgun and, you know, I'm going to use a stapler to some guy's face, and that's how I'm going to, you know, deal with, you know. So she's using what she has around her, and I love how she uses the expectations that are put on her and then subverts those so she can still do what she needs to do to get the job done. So, you know, they tell her, go get the coffee, and then she goes and brings the coffee in, but the reason she's bringing the coffee into the meeting is so she can eavesdrop on the meeting and get intel, you know. And she tells her boss in one of the episodes she wants to take a day off for women's things. So she plays the menstrual card to get away for a day so she can actually do intel and work on a case. And so she uses what is seen as a detriment or a weakness and makes that into a strength. And I think that's just such a wonderful idea, because anybody, male or female, you're going to come up against barriers in your life, in your work, whatever it is. And so instead of running at that barrier full tilt and frustration, be like Peggy and think, how can I use what I have to circumnavigate the situation and come out on top?
Well, and that was even something Ivchenko had mentioned to Dooley and everyone else about Carter's win. He goes, yeah, women are often underestimated, overlooked. They can get places other people cannot. He even threw that, which has the great Dottie, Carter battle that we have kind of throughout the series as well.
Yeah, I mean, we see Dottie pull that card as well, where she gets pulled over by the police. She's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It's my old grandfather. He can't see in one eye. He has a war injury." So it's like she's playing the woman card. She's playing the war injury card. She plays a veteran card. She, and gets away with it. And I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying this is how these characters, like Peggy, uses that for good. She finds out, how can I circumnavigate legally to get something done so I can do something good in the world. Dottie does it malevolently. The other thing I loved about the show, and we don't see it a lot in TV and movies in general, is that the women in the show are supportive of other women in the show. So instead of, I know, right? Like, yes, finally. So instead of having a cat fight over a guy, Angie and Peggy going at it over Souza, God forbid, we have women camaraderie. They're joining together. They're supporting each other. Peggy's supporting Angie in her acting career and being like, no, you're good. You can, keep doing it. Don't give up. When she does her audition for Is You Is or Is You Ain't My Baby, she's like, I guess I ain't, because I didn't even get 2 bars in. Right? And then we've got Colleen. We only see her for a little bit, but she's lending Peggy clothing. Use my sweater and, keep the red sweater. It looks good on you. It might catch the eye of some guy, say, on a date. So they're supporting each other. And, Angie's kind of helping Peggy when she has the interview to get her new apartment.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
and that was something that S.H.I.E.L.D. did very well as well, is constant supportive women things. That's something my wife says when I get her to watch it with me, is she's just like, these girls don't fight. They support each other. They build up. They can have drama and conflict without cattiness.
Yeah. And I love it. And I mean, I see Agent May is Agent May is there because Agent Carter came before her. Carter paved the way for us to have a May.
Right.
Which I love. So that was kind of some of the things that sort of stuck out for me. I love the historical references that we constantly had throughout the show. Like, they talk about Rita Hayworth and like Joe DiMaggio. And, so they're very aware of the time period. And then I loved just the props, set design, and costumes. Looking at Colleen's apartment in the first episode, the groceries that they have, how everything's set up. The reality of, you're not going to have 47 dresses to wear. You're going to have maybe 4. And so you're going to swap clothing with your roommate so that you can have a larger wardrobe. In the 40s, well, first off, clothing had been rationed to begin with because of the war. And even after the war, you still couldn't get access to things for quite some time. And, I could go on forever and ever, but just some of the things that I liked is that in season 1, we see that the costume silhouette is very reminiscent of the silhouettes during World War II. So there's not a lot of fabric. Everything's very tapered at the waist, long skirts, and you don't really see that change until season 2, which we'll talk about on another review. But I love that they were accurate to the costumes of the time period, and even the colors were correct for the time period. Women doing little things to make a difference in an outfit. We see Peggy has these stay-up tights with the line up the back that were very popular, and they used to actually draw them on during the war because you couldn't get nylons because they were all being used for parachutes, right? So things like that. So we see that the economy has recovered enough that she can now get access to nylons and wear those. So that's cool. But we don't have enough of recovery that we're seeing fuller skirts, and we haven't got to the Dior look of the 50s yet, right? So like little things like that, I mean, and I'm not a costume expert, but just seeing those little details that they put in, that was awesome. And I love that Peggy uses items that are traditionally feminine to subvert things in the course of justice. So like she uses lipstick and then it's turned into a weapon, right? That's something that's very feminine. And there are other examples that I can't think of off the top of my head. But just the lipstick thing, the reason it's important is that lipstick during World War II was considered a patriotic duty, and colorful nails as well. So it was one thing that wasn't rationed because they felt like if women could have something to be dolled up to feel good about themselves, they were more likely to be, invested in the war effort, right? Everything else is limited. Everything else is falling apart. You're like stitching your clothing back together for the 5th time. You're wearing somebody else's shoes. Like it really got bad. And especially in the UK, it got really bad because obviously they were in the war for a longer period of time.
Right.
And, but the Women's Auxiliary Army Corps, they were given, so a makeup company was commissioned to create a red color lipstick that would go to the Corps. And this was in the US for women because it matched the red piping on their uniform. And it was called Montezuma Red. So it came out in 1941 and you could only get it if you were in service, right? And then it was so popular that Elizabeth Barden then created Victory Red, which was available to the public. And that's the color that Peggy wears on her nails. And it's the lipstick color that she wears for season 1, which is made by a company called Besame, which makes replica makeup colors. So, I mean,
right.
I'm sure all thrilled about this. I like it because it's actually historically accurate, and that's kind of cool. And it relates to World War II. And so we see that, she's still wearing that red lip. And episode 1, we also see that she's wearing, the first time we see her, she's wearing Captain America's colors. Blue suit, red hat, and she's walking against a sea of suits.
Right.
And so I thought that was very symbolic of her taking on the Captain America mantle in her way and going against the status quo.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway,
Well,
that's just some of the cool costume stuff. I won't bore you anymore with it, but
well, but I think that's an important point to hit because I think that is one of the draws. I mean, that's not only, the 40s as a period does have its fascination, and it is part of the fashion. It is part of the coming out of World War II and the kind of, resurgence and victory and the flush economy and the shifts and changes that all kind of happened immediately after that and leading into the 50s. So I think keeping Peggy in that period right after World War II and keeping right in there was a smart move, both, from a storytelling standpoint, but then again, the draw of the costumes, the look, the feel, and to differentiate it a little bit with S.H.I.E.L.D., which had all the technology. Here we're seeing, well, you've got to be an agent without the technology, or maybe you got one or two little things, the special lipstick and, then of course, the fancy Stark tools and such.
camera
but a lot.
I camera pen, I'm not impressed.
But I think that worked as well because season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had them as like, it's just a ragtag group. And I think we as a culture are kind of excited about that underdog, the ragtag group, and having Carter back as SSR agent and disrespected and having to work things behind the back of everyone else gets her in that kind of same feel, which I think we as an audience enjoy. Don.
I want to make one quick statement. Montezuma Red? Montezuma, what the hell would Montezuma Red? Seriously. Oh
Yep.
my god!
It just flows, man. It just.
Yeah, that nice little pun there, guys.
Thank you.
Montezuma's revenge. You know.
So my feel. I don't know. I was very excited about Agent Carter, much like everyone else. And overall, I enjoyed the series. I guess maybe I might be slightly more critical than everyone else is because to me there was a little bit of unevenness in it. The first couple episodes felt very different than the later episodes. There was sort of a play into some of the comedy and almost slapstick in some areas, specifically when Peggy was trying to get into Souza's desk to get to the photographs of, the blonde that was captured in the nightclub. It was all like, she acted like half drunk and then hiding under the table and trying to unlock it. There was a total goofiness that was very much at odds with a lot of her other work. And so to me, there was a little unevenness in sort of how the series was presented. It felt almost like the first couple episodes were playing with an idea. And then by episode 4 or 5, they really locked in. And that was all like one straight shot through. So that kind of threw me off a little bit, just that to me, that sense of unevenness. On the other hand, wrapping the fact that we start off with her mourning Captain America and trying to move on, and through the series dealing with, do I trust people? Do I let them in? Do I hold them off to protect them, or does that isolate me? And then leading all the way up to that last final bit where she's got to save Stark from the plane, and she's back on the radio, and it's like, we gotta let him go. Look, I'm tearing up now as I say it. God, I'm such a sap. But there was a sort of beauty, and at the end, yeah, she pours out the blood and is like, I'm ready to move on. There was such a nice arc and story there that really became emotional. So as I said, while to me there was a little unevenness in the series and stuff, at least from the beginning, man, once they really got underneath them and really picked a direction and really went with it, it had everything that you wanted. This is a James Bond type spy caper with a better female lead and half of the gadgets, if none of them. Like you said, it's the stapler whack to the head, is what it does. We're gonna make you think that it's one thing and we'll turn things right. The superness was fun. The agent and character work and interplay, the earning of respect between her, Jack Thompson's arc, from being a chauvinist schmuck to hearing his sad tale of how he got his star, to the confession of how he really got his Navy Cross. Sorry. All of that was really powerful. Dooley's whole bit with trying to reconnect with his wife and then being turned by Ivchenko. God, those last episodes were just full of emotion and heart. And it's the only thing that you can do with a short series like this. And I think, Don, you were right there with the 8 episodes. Even though to me, little rough start, it forces people to tell straight stories without any filler. And then you got a cast that can back it up. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about our cast. Let's talk about Edwin Jarvis, James Darcy. My God. I did not think I was going to like this character, and he turned out to just great backstory, great heart, encouraging Peggy when she thinks she can do it. How do you think this is going to happen? I will tell them and they will respect me. No, they won't. Really, that is the biggest loss of this series, is we see no more Jarvis Peggy interaction, because I could take that all day. Rob, kick things off with Edwin Jarvis and any of the other characters you want to dive into at this point.
No, I think James Darcy. Okay, because we already know Haley Atwell is great, right? And there's tons of standouts. I mean, getting Dominic Cooper back. I know, like at least for me and Darren, because we've covered and watched Preacher. We really like Dominic Cooper. And yeah, you've got some other people that are famous for being in Weed and stuff, or you got people like Shea Wiggum who are just really great actors. But James Darcy's like the surprise to me, the big surprise, because it kind of a lot of the success and failure of the relationships in this show, or a lot of the things that happen, deal with whether or not the Peggy and Jarvis character connect well enough, and they just work so well as together that him being both being transplants from another country, one having to deal with a Howard Hughes type genius in kind of a superhero world, right? And then you've got Peggy who's coming over, and him kind of trying to play both the butler and friend, like trying to run both relationships that he's got going on really well, and slowly but surely taking Peggy's side over Stark's, and until they're basically like best friends. Like Angie and Peggy might have a nice great girl connection, but it feels like they're best friends, and it never gets weird. If anything, they both play so well off of each other. And James Darcy as an actor, first off, okay, if you haven't seen him in things, he doesn't get around enough. I have not seen him in enough things. What's weird is just this last week, I saw him in a movie that not anybody talks about. Nobody talks about this movie, but it's called Let's Be Cops with Damon Wayans Jr. and the guy from New Girl who plays Nick, Jake Johnson. And in that, Darcy plays the heavy. And he goes all out in that, covering himself in like tattoos and being really mean and violent. And this was right around the time that Agent Carter was out. And the guy is a chameleon. And his comedic timing is freaking brilliant. I love that he's kind of like, at first, and at least in season one, he's kind of like, he reminds me of Miles from Frasier a little bit. We're always hearing about his wife. We're always hearing like he's got this life that we don't, we only hear about, but he's always there doing something for somebody else. You always wonder who's taking care of you. But I don't want to talk too much more about him, because then you start getting, it'd be real easy to start going into season 2. But everything they did with him was genius. Every time, that he would try to kind of be a roadblock for her, she would always have some way of flipping it on him to where, he would come around to her way of thinking. But he also was trying to be a good, trying to be the guy who reins in Howard Stark, who was a 1940s Tony. And that's not easy. It's not easy. And it just, I think I would have loved to see James Darcy play Alfred if he hadn't already played Jarvis. That would be just too weird seeing him also play Alfred, but he would have been a perfect Alfred. Any other actors that I want to talk about? I mean, Dooley's great. Shea Wiggum is fantastic. All right, he's just fantastic. Chad Michael Murray, he's really good at making me not like him. I really like we talked about how we hear his story and everything, and in our review we talk about how, yeah, that's really great, but by the end of it, he's still the same guy. He's still that same coward. He told her the story, and he learns basically nothing. He has the opportunity to change, and I love the character on the fact that they don't Not everybody changes. Not everybody who gets all the way there to the finish line chooses the right path. And he gets every opportunity and he doesn't. And too many times we do see that kind of phony, like, oh, the Grinch's heart grew 3 sizes that day, except no, it's not really. He's still that person, that the 1940s man. Just because he knows what he's doing doesn't mean that he's going to take a different path. And it's much more realistic that way, to not have everybody learn their lesson. Some people just don't. Also, just watching Souza this time around, I thought was just knowing where he's going made me, relax a little bit about his character this time around. And I enjoyed him so much more understanding this guy this time around. And now when we finally when I get back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. season 7, I'm going to be like more of a Souza fan than I was when we watched it the first time. And then you've got a bunch of different, like Lindsay Fonseca as Angie, I thought was fantastic. I'm talking a lot, so I'm going to pass it. Everybody's really good. All the guest stars are fantastic. This is such a well-cast show. They get character actors on here galore in our reviews. It was hard for me not to get sidetracked with talking about this guy from this thing and this guy from that thing all over the place. There are so many good people on here that you got people from The Wire on here. You got people from The Americans on here. It's just a wide range of great acting. And I will pass it on to the next person. So as far as the cast goes, like home run. And of course, I should say Haley Atwell. Just brilliant.
Oh, you're muted.
Dawn, I think we've got you up next here.
All right, yeah.
I'm trying to follow where my notes. I'm like, I got to stop jumping around. I'm losing track of who I've got next.
Jarvis, right? Yeah.
So yeah, look, the cast, as Rob just stated, brilliant. There wasn't any actor or actress that I was like, oh man, they're phoning it in or they were miscast. I love the actress that played Angie because she really brought that outsider sensibility to it, where it was like she's trying to be friends with Peggy. She doesn't really have that many friends around her, and here's someone who she sees every day that it's like, oh, okay, well, she said she needs a place to stay, and hey, I need a new best friend. How about it? So, throughout the season when Peggy is really, trying to keep her at bay, not because she's trying to brush her off, but because, she doesn't want to blow her cover and possibly get this person mixed up in something that will be way over their heads. She's doing that the best that she can. And at first, Angie doesn't really realize what's going on, and she thinks, oh, okay, well, yeah, I know when I'm being, brushed off or whatever. And when she, later on, when the agents catch up to her because of the entanglements with Stark and everything, and their perception of the situation, she's kind of brought into the fold just a little bit. She realizes, like, oh, no, okay, well, this is kind of for my own good. Excuse me, to a certain extent. And you see the way that she attaches herself to the situation and how she's able to I want to say morph. No, adapt. Yeah, that's what I meant. To adapt to the situation. So, like, when she knows that Peggy is outside and the agents are after her, she starts crying, or at least fake crying, in order to lure them into a false sense of, oh man, well, we've just upset this person. And remember, they're coming from the perspective of, We're supposed to be gentlemen, to the outside world. So we can't be seen as treating a woman badly, especially in front of other women. And so that's the thing that gets them to be like, okay, well, cool, we're gonna leave investigating her apartment alone so that we can, move along with this investigation, but we can't, have it be that we made the woman cry. And then, again, James Darcy as Jarvis. It's funny because remember, for those of you who may not know, I'm saying remember, but for those of you who may not know, Tony's AI Jarvis is supposed to be based off of the butler Jarvis that he grew up with. So, they kind of, James Darcy and, oh man, why am I forgetting his name? Come on, Vision, Jarvis.
Paul Bettany.
Yes. They look like they could kind of be related just a little bit. Not 100%, but they, maybe they might be, first cousins once removed or something like that.
Jarvis a little older, a little snarkier, dealing with, having dealt with older Stark and now younger Stark. Yeah.
Yeah.
See that.
So it was great casting just based on you have this English very gentlemanly kind of figure. I'll never forget when he called in the tip and he's trying his best American accent.
I'm just a guy.
He's like, yeah, listen here, Matt. He's like, who is this? And then at the end where he almost breaks character, he's like, have a lovely night. It just hangs up really quickly.
I got a hot tip for ya.
What? Oh God, yeah. So that was kind of awesome. How they have those little scenes there. Listen, I love when actors can do other accents, or they have the awkward attempt at doing another accent, and it's called, it's definitely put on the carpet for them in whatever medium that they're doing. So it's kind of like, oh, we're all right. So it's supposed to be a bad accent. They know it's a bad accent, and we, as the audience, know that they know it's a bad accent. So, yeah, that was a pretty awesome thing that they did. Listen, Dooley, oh my God, man, so heartbreaking towards the end for him. I love that actor as being Eli from Bulwark Empire. So when I saw him on Agent Carter, I was like, oh yes, finally, all right, cool. Yeah, this guy is awesome. The actor who played Jack Thompson, to me, he reminded me a lot of Grant Ward. Just the kind of, I think that if Grant Ward would have grown up in Depression era United States and post World War II, that's who he would have been. He would have been Jack Thompson. Same kind of demeanor, very self-assured, but very flawed, and sometimes not willing to admit what his flaws are. And if he does admit to the flaws, it's like, yeah, I know you know him, but I'm not going to let anybody else know that you know him. So yeah, listen, he didn't learn his lesson, and we saw Souza at the end there, kind of like, hey, I'm just gonna let this guy, steal your shine. But listen, Peggy said, hey, look, I know my worth. So, hey, that at the end of it all, we already know how this ends up for Peggy. So, I mean, hey, I think that she got the best of the situation. But that is a testament to Haley Atwell's uh, um, acting ability. I mean, because look, I see Agent Carter, and I don't see Haley Atwell. I see Agent Carter, for the actor who plays Daniel Souza. I see Daniel Souza. I see Jack Thompson. There's no one in there who I saw who took me out of their role, and gotta definitely give a shout out for the very end with the scene with Toby Jones as Arnim Zola. That yeah, that's why I'm like, oh, with the timeline, we were talking about the timeline thing before, and I'm like, damn it, where the hell is this actually in MCU or not? Oh, this is killing me right now.
Guess that would be a Project Paperclip transition there for Zola before he ends up. Well, I guess because S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't technically out yet, so they probably wouldn't have recruited him in. So, I mean, yeah, it does sort of work. Corrie, what about yourself? Oh, yeah. Rob, did you have something real quick?
Just that because I watched Infinity War and Endgame today, I noticed that when Tony and Cap go to the base, Howard Stark is looking for Zola. He goes down there and he's calling out for Armin. And this was 1970.
So yeah, he makes the mistake later to pull him out, and that's how Zola gets in. Okay, perfect. I love the little connections there. Corrie, what about yourself? James Darcy, Jarvis, any of the other characters there that really hit you, stand out? What are your thoughts?
Okay, well, put Dottie on the back burner. I'll get to her. But first,
Fair.
Jarvis. So what I loved about Jarvis is that he is both the comedy and the conscience in Peggy Carter. Alliteration score. So I love that he kind of is the comedy to like Peggy's straight man, when he tries to rescue her when she gets arrested, and she's like, "Did you sign that confession form?" He's like, "As I said, there was a lot of panic involved." He's just, and when they're trying to break out, he's like, wait, what if there's someone on the other side? Well, then there'll be a spray of bullets. What if, he just, sometimes he does things that you think there's no way he's involved in anything spy related because he's just being so ridiculous. And he has some of the best lines, right? Peggy asks him how he's doing, and he says, "Oh, these racks of explosives are distracting me from the smell of sour milk." When he's stuck in the back of that truck, and he has these like great sort of moments, and a lot of times he's also calling out the like ridiculousness of the situation they're in. Peggy says something like, "I've got 2 foreign agents with no voice boxes fighting over a milk truck full of explosives." And his line is, "Just another day at the office." He's just constantly bringing the viewer back to the awareness of this is insane what's going on. And he's just along for the ride and loving it the whole way through. But then I also love that he is the source of like the conscience and the advisor to Peggy. I know Rob and I talked about this a lot, how mostly season 1 is Peggy trying to do it all on her own and feeling like she has to be the stand-in for Captain America. Cap isn't here, so she's gonna like come hell or high water. She's gonna fill those boots, and to a detriment. Like she so idolizes Steve that she isn't able to work as part of a team. And so Jarvis has to kind of bring the reality home and say, even Captain America needed people beside him. Like you were one of those people that was important for him. And he's got this great line. She's making jokes. She's like being sarcastic, and she says, "How I managed to stay alive before I met you, I don't know," because he's trying to patch her up. And Jarvis very seriously and very clearly tells it like it is and says, your line of work requires support, people who care about your well-being, who will be there to stitch up your wounds. And we talked about this. Like, she doesn't want to allow people to get close. Dawn mentioned this because she's worried of putting them in danger. And Jarvis calls her out on like how illogical this is. He says, so your solution is to remove yourself from the world you wish to protect. Where's the sense in that? There is not a man or a woman, no matter how fit he or she may be, who is capable of carrying the entire world on their shoulders. From what Mr. Stark has told me, Captain Rogers relied heavily on you for courage, strategy, and moral guidance, which is exactly what Jarvis is being right now. You are his support. Your desire to help others is noble, but I doubt you'll find much success unless you allow others to help you. And so Peggy has this arc of, I can do it all on my own, which is very much like a first wave feminist arc of like, we are women, hear us roar, you know, and then smack right into the brick wall, which is again what Souza says about Daisy, right? Those people who run smack into the brick wall need someone to be there to pick them up. And so he's taking that he's learned from Peggy and Captain America and applying it now to S.H.I.E.L.D. So I loved that Jarvis is kind of the heart of the show. He's the comedic goof of the show, but he's also the heart of the show. And we see that also when we learn about his wife's story of how she came to the States and that he was willing to, you know, hijack a plane and forge papers to try to save her from the Holocaust because she is Jewish. So I love that about Jarvis's character. Who else to talk about? Dooley, I love his character change, that we can kind of see Peggy chipping away at his held preconceived notions, which are the preconceived notions of his time period. Like, he's not a bad guy. He tries to give her the opportunities he can. But for example, when they have that mission overseas, Dooley's looking at it as, I'm the head of this department. If I clear a woman to go into a like combat zone, which was unheard of at that time period, something happens. I'm the idiot that let you get killed, or I'm the idiot that let my men get killed because I let you tag along. So he's not a bad guy. And so I like to see that kind of change of his character, where by the end of that season, he's saying, you know, good job, girl, you know, promise me you're going to catch this guy. So he gives her a mission in a way. But again, Rob and I were talking about, it's sad that we lose him so early in the season, because it would have been so much fun to see where would Dooley have gone from that point. And it would have been neat to see Dooley and Peggy working together more. So that was one of the things. Angie, again, also with Dawn, I agree. I loved Angie. I loved how, again, she's doing exactly what Peggy's doing. She is using the stereotypes and the expectations or assumptions about a woman and using those to get what she wants. So the whole, as Dawn said, the crying as a way to distract the guys so that she can help Peggy in. And, you know, and she's a smart cookie, because she says, you know, I knew there was something up. I knew you didn't work at the phone company, right? Like, she couldn't put all the pieces together, but she, you know, she was picking up on things. And so I love that. What else? Souza, again, great character. It's wonderful to see a spectrum of guys on the show, because we've got the guy like Jack Thompson, who's just being a total jerk and saying things like, yeah, we all know you served under Captain America, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, right? And all the sexist jokes where I'm like, I want to punch him. And then when she's doing the coding work, he's like, yeah, well, assuming that she's doing this right. And Peggy goes, yeah, she is trying to concentrate. You know, so even not addressing her by her first name. So we've got like that end of the spectrum. And then we've got Souza, who is kind of a stand-in for Steve, right? he has a limitation, which is disability. He's looked down upon by all the other guys in the group. We've got Thompson literally making fun of him when he brings in that bum from the docks. He's like, "Hey guys, we can all relax now. Souza's found, Howard Stark." And Kaminsky makes the comment about no girl's gonna go from a shield, vibranium shield, to an aluminum crutch. So, yeah, Dee, you're muted. But so we've got these kind of jerk characters, but then we've got Souza, who is really, you gotta admire him because he's doing the best he can in the situation he's in the time period he's in, to be an upstanding guy. And I like how when in the beginning of the episodes, when he goes to stand up for Peggy, she kind of says, "No, you can't do this, because if you stand up for me, it's going to undermine anything that I build for myself here. You have to let me fight my own battles." Like, I appreciate the support, but anything you do is just going to be manipulated or misstrued as, "Oh, you like me," right? Or you're sweet on me. So I really admired his character in the sense that he's trying to do the same thing Peggy's doing. He's trying to work within the confines of what he's given in his job, in his world, and he's trying to support her in any way he can, but also not undermine what she's doing in her own job. And he gives her the benefit of the doubt. So that's what I liked about Souza's character. Am I missing anybody? Dottie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was about to say the next thing was to get in more into our villains, principally Dottie and Ivchenko. But yeah, let's kick things off with Dottie, because if there is a character that is the antithesis to Peggy, it is Dottie Underwood. Yeah, very much so. Is this the Red Room program, early version of the Black Widow program? We have a lot of the same scenes. We do get a nice shot of her background. And what is it that Thompson says to Souza? "Look, if that kid is any indication, I would hate to run into one that's all grown up."
Yep.
And especially considering that she sleeps handcuffed to the bed voluntarily at this point. Dottie's a messed up individual. Let's dive into Dottie. Go right ahead, Corrie.
Oh, goodness. I mean, okay. Got to get my thoughts in order. I have too many notes. I love that Dottie is the perfect counterpoint to Peggy. Everything Peggy does, Dottie can do just as good, if not maybe better at some points. And she's doing the exact same thing, where she's playing that female card. And so we see her come in, and she totally has this act on. She's playing, the naive, wide-eyed dancer who's come to the big city. And meanwhile, in the background, she's picking locks and sneaking into Peggy's room and going through her stuff. And, setting up these horrible plans to release a toxic gas that's going to cause people to kill each other. So we just see her as she's really able to hide herself, and she's very much a chameleon. She can change into so many different things. And we see that nothing really phases her. And we come across that more in season 2. But in season 1, she kills a guy with a Black Widow takedown in a hallway and steals his automatic pistol.
That we never see again, sadly.
It goes missing. Poof. And she's just an example of what the doctor was saying, that women that are overlooked, right? And I love that they also address sort of this sexist ease of abuse during the time period.
Right.
I'm thinking of the scene where she goes into the dentist's office, and there's an interview set up, which whether or not she knew that was even going on, she just wants the location to set up a gun and to communicate. But the dentist makes some comment about, I'm expecting the girl I hired to be willing to go all the way. And he's like, puts his hand on her knee. And you just know that he's implying that he wants, a woman on the side. But I guess the horrifying thing is that is the norm. And that still happens today, sadly. And
it did justify a drill to the eyeball, though. So.
I mean, yeah, that's a bit intense, but she takes care of it, and I love how the show often circumvents your expectation, because I thought when I first saw that episode that Dottie was going to sniper the doctor, right? But then we find out no, she's just communicating with him in Morse code, and remind me to talk about Peggy and her history of Morse code and code breaking and that. But yeah, I just love how she constantly circumvents our expectation of what she's going to do, and just showing exactly what that doctor was saying, that women, there's a certain expectation around women, especially at the time, and so they can easily go in to places, obtain information, bat their eyes, pretend they're lost. I mean, even Peggy does that. She's like, oh, I get so confused around books, when she was in that one scene, when she was trying to sneak in and get intel. So it's Angie is a great foil to Peggy. She's a great villain. Your hero is only as good as your villain.
Yeah.
And with Angie, she's like Carmen Sandiego. You can never quite catch her. You're almost there, and then she's gone again. And
well, yeah, and again, we're dealing with someone who has those same limitations culturally that Peggy has, but unfortunately, as a villain, uses them to subvert those as opposed to trying to work within or around. Dawn, what about yourself? Any thoughts there on Dottie Underwood?
I mean, well, listen, when she first shows up, it's like, okay, they went out of their way to introduce her, so she means something. And then, when she goes and snaps that one guy's neck, it's like, oh, okay. And then you think back on, oh, well, she said she's a dancer. And then they give the little flashback. It was a little bit, holy shit, Red Room, this is the Black Widow, And now, thinking back on Avengers, and it's like, okay, well, when you first find out about Natasha Romanoff, you're like, well, she's Russian. Why doesn't she have an accent? But, you think about it, it's like, okay, well, here's Dottie Underwood in the 1940s with no accent. She's Russian. She came from the Red Room program. So obviously, they have agents who probably specialize in being in different areas of the world. So this way, okay, well, you're going to be our American operative. You must sound like an American. It can't be a thing where people are able to, where someone is talking to you and they might be a spy and they pick up on the fact that, oh, that accent sounds very not, North American or whatever it may have you, and so I like the fact that they kept the continuity in terms of the way that we see the training, and also the Easter eggs that they kind of set up with it, and just the clues to who she was before the actual reveal. So brilliant, obviously it comes off as a little one-dimensional because we don't get any of her inner workings or motivations. But she was like Peggy Carter's version of Darth Maul, where Darth Maul comes in He's menacing. He looks cool. You know, he can beat up the heroes. And you know, when he's gone, it's like, oh man, I wish I had more of him. Same here. Dottie Underwood comes in. You know, she has a look about her that is, you know, striking. She's menacing when she shows up. You know, the heroes are underestimating her because, oh, it's a woman. How could she possibly be avenged? Oh my God! Oh, can you please stop kicking me in the face? No! Oh, please put down that gun and that chair and that pipe. You know, so yeah, I like the fact that they were able to use that she was a woman and she would be underestimated by everyone in society to her advantage. You know, I wish we would have gotten just a little more as far as her motivations, if she had any personal motivations, or you know, was she just a puppet of the doctor? You know, it was a little hard to tell there, but I definitely like the Red Room stuff in there, you know, and just showing that this is something that had been going on for a very long time. Oh, Corrie?
I just wanted to chime in. You were talking about like her background, and I totally forgot to even talk about her childhood and growing up and the Red Room, what that actually was. And you know, she kills her friend in a sparring match. And I'm wondering if maybe the Red Room was more of they erase your identity. They erase who you are, so you become a blank slate, because we see her in Peggy's room putting on a British accent and practicing like, oh, I'm Peggy Carter, I'm SSR agent. So I wonder if they were even made to be chameleons, where they can just take on any identity. And to that, we see them practicing like an American 1940s speech by watching Snow White. And that's just so disturbing to me.
Yeah, I think she even mentions when she's that last face off with Carter is, I can be anybody, you know, I always want to be you. Now I can be. Maybe I'll be a British agent now, you know, for the SSR. She does imply the fact of her ability to become whatever is needed. So, and that would be a necessary bit of spycraft.
And there's a bit of like an obsession too with Peggy, where she's like, I always wanted to be like you girls with perfect skin and perfect hair. And like, it's almost like this very weird, messed up, you know, obsession with Agent Carter that she has.
Sure, for sure. Rob, did you have any thoughts there on Dottie? Maybe one or two.
For the sake of moving things along, I mean, I see her as a victim, and that's just never had her own identity, and now that's what she does. Is she just kind of becomes what she needs to be, so that I think that's partially, you know, lends to her psychosis. Is not just her training as from a girl and what she did to her friend and everything, but growing up, not knowing who she is and constantly just popping in and out of personalities has made her even more of a wild card. And again, just I think about you know, like all the potential that this character would have, you know, to keep coming back. To be that character that each season, all of a sudden, just you open up that door and bum, 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 they're back, you know, that with some new plan. And I think it would have been a lot of fun to see just how the relationship between Dottie and Carter would evolve over the time. Because without her masters, what could she really become? You know, when she's off the chain and has nobody to answer to. You know, if she was a person in real life, she'd probably be a serial killer. But on a show like this, you know, they can make her more of this, like, kind of come in and out, like be the character who's like, no, I swear I'm here to help this time. I've got the information, or like there's so many ways you can go with a character like that. She makes me think of Krychek from X-Files. The person who just never dies, just keeps showing up at that crazy point where all of a sudden you open up a door and it's like, oh, there's that person, like right there. They're behind the whole thing, and you're like, oh, and they just keep coming back, to be that constant foil for your character. And I just, that actress is so fantastic and so versatile. And the training, the contrast and training that the two characters have, it just would have been so much fun. And again, I one of the only things that we constantly talk about on our reviews is just, we could have had so much more of this awesomeness, and we have to take little bites. We got this little sample size, like 18 episodes, to just, it's like having your soup and salad and your appetizer, and then they say dinner's canceled. Like you're really ready to eat now. You're all warmed up for the meal, and then they go, yeah, that's it. The restaurant closed. Sorry. It's just, it's a shame, because what they got to do with this character and Ivchenko too, like they really subverted that. Again, I think whoever was mentioning that it was Corrie talking about the sniper rifle scene, which was one of my favorite scenes. Is you really think she's going to kill the guy, and then he's in on the whole thing. Like, it's just so.
Well, thank you for that perfect transition, because, yeah, we are running late, but I do want to talk about, before things really get going, we wrap things up, I do want to talk about Ivchenko and Leviathan a little bit, and sort of that sort of background plan, because, I mean, obviously we get a nice direct connection with, of course, season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which this is in the middle of, which deals with Whitehall and Bocce and the Faustus method, which originates right here with Ivchenko. If you notice the first, when they give his little background shot, he is reading
Dr. Faustus.
Dr. Faustus.
And he says, the devil take me, which I was like, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. And then, as you can see by the end, even though they sort of shut him up, they shut him up in a cell with Arnim Zola, the, of course, ex-Hydra scientist that will begin Hydra's infiltration of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, I mean, really, just a nice kind of perfect way of making a connection in there and giving us a villain very unexpected, very smart, who digs in, who gains the trust of Chief Dooley and just talks with him. The fact that we get to that point at the end where Thompson's like, don't let him talk to you. If he opens his mouth, it's all over. That it comes down to that kind of particular point. And then Sousa's brilliant, just sticking cotton wads in his ears. I love that. But yeah, I mean, Faustus, Ivchenko was a great villain, and I think because that he was sneaky, because he came in kind of behind the scenes, that we think that he is the victim that ends up being the one behind all of it. But with that, and if you've got any thoughts, what exactly was Ivchenko's plan? Because if he wanted to get that one item, I don't know. I guess to me, at the beginning, that's where everything gets kind of funky, between stealing all of the stuff, all of the things, and then what was it? If we could assume that Dietz Banis, sorry, I know I messed up. Beat Brannis turned, but why would he then start selling all of the weapons to gain attention? I don't know. Ivchenko's plan ends up being very cool. The whole beginning stage of it to me was all of kind of a little funky. But it does give us our Leviathan, our kind of Agent Carter era Hydra, which would have been a very fun villain to, again, like you're mentioning, Rob, kind of get a nice bite into, except for the fact that the real ends up getting taken away from us. So, Rob, why don't you lead us off as we start steering towards the end here on Dr. Ivchenko, Leviathan, what he brought into the character, what you were hoping to see, and how that played out.
Well, I had completely forgotten about that character from the first time I'd seen it, and I I think it's once you get past all the interesting stuff that is the build up to it, him getting into Dooley's head is so messed up. It affects that character's end arc so much. Because he's the guy that's if you think about I'm going to talk about it like this. Dooley's this guy who's been worried about Carter being like a liability. And he's the head of the SSR, and he's the one who becomes the big liability. He's the one who's fooled by the man in front of him, because nobody, they even bring it up. Anybody really ask this guy what he's doing here? Like the protocol of this guy, like all the, like the access that this man has. He's still from Russia. Like, so why are we sitting here, and to know in the end that he was fooled by another man over, the guides of friendship and understanding, and then know that the only person who can solve it is the woman that's been getting your coffee, and have to know that he's never going to get that, because of all of it, he's not going to get that relationship with his family. He's blown it all. And it's just from this guy who just sat there talking to him, just being his buddy, and I love that kind of villain. And again, like you said, like they put the thing on his face and they say, don't let him talk. And again, that makes me think of another X-Files thing, which is, if you remember on season 3, Pusher, the guy who, if he told you anything, he would just go right through it. He would get you to convince of anything through hypnotic suggestion, and the kind of damage that person can do. And unfortunately, we don't get to see like enough of it after season 1, really, because we jump into the whole new arc for the characters. We see some of it, but like most of it is kind of wrapped up here. But again, I think that would have shown us, I think Ivchenko would have just been, was just the tip of the iceberg for what we were going to get into, especially with Cold War stuff and, McCarthyism, all that stuff we were leading towards, that starts coming out more in season 2. That I don't think Ivchenko was as strong a villain as Dottie, because he was kind of just like, I'm the guy with the plan. This is the sense of the side, what would have been kind of considered the right-hand woman that Dottie is, actually ends up being the more interesting character than Ivchenko. But the way they introduced him, though, I thought was really interesting, because you think he's just there to be the guy who's calming down the actual guy. And then they kill that guy, and you forget that maybe this was all a setup. He's the one who kills the guy. But I'm gonna stop there so that we can move it along and let everybody else talk about this.
Don, what about you? Any thoughts on Leviathan and Ivchenko?
Yeah, interesting plot, obviously. And honestly speaking, I hadn't watched season 1 in a while. So, during the Howling Commandos episode where they spring him from jail, I totally forgotten that, he was the guy doing hypnosis. I remembered, Dooley jumping out of the window, and I'm like, okay, he jumps out of a window because somebody hypnotizes him, I think, or something like that. But yeah, when he first shows up, I'm like, okay. But then like something clicked, like right after, like something doesn't seem right about him. So when he goes and he opens up the window and Dottie's there with the rifle, I'm like, wait, okay, does Dooley jump out the window now? But no, he hasn't been hypnotized yet, so he doesn't have a reason to jump out the window. And then I see the flashes for Morse code. I'm like, oh, okay, got it now. You know. And you want to know why all of that happened to me? Because I didn't focus. Yes. So yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, his plan seemed a little outrageous. You know, he was going to have everybody fight in the middle of Times Square. But I mean, like, okay, so yeah, you know, maybe I need a little help with history in terms of when exactly the Cold War started, because you know this is like literally a year after the end of World War II. So it seems I don't know. Maybe the Cold War did start like immediately after, um, but for Russia to have an operative, or unless he was working on his own, for them to have an operative that's just like, all right, well, yeah, we're gonna, you know, try to bring down America immediately with one of their greatest inventions and all that. It was a little, it was like, damn, you know, talk about ruthless. But it seemed like his plan was more revenge on Howard Stark and Howard Stark's legacy because of the way that one of his inventions was used. And, you know, Howard's telling him, like, look, you know, I'm sorry, I never meant for any of this to happen. I'm actually trying to do good things, but look, you know, science isn't always an exact science. You know, these things, you make them, you test them, and I mean, look at the time period we're talking about. You know, during this time, shit, they thought asbestos was a good thing to have, you know, laced in your houses and buildings and stuff. You know, so this is the time where it's like almost like the scientific Wild West. You know, we come up with things. It seems good at the moment. You know, we try practical applications. Holy shit, 1,000 people just died. All right, well, you know, we mothball it and you know, just, you know, try not to bring up that project again. But hey, you know, it was another unintended consequence that we were able to use it for. So yeah, cool. So it's one of those things where they were all living in an era of you know, technological advancement where people weren't necessarily thinking about the moral implications of what these technologies could possibly do until, you know, you get an incident like what the doctor said he experienced, where he was like, hey, the only thing that stopped me from being one of these hundreds of dead people was the fact that I had on a gas mask. You know, or else I would have been, you know, a damn rage monster killing one of my friends or family members as well. You know, it's one of those things where, yeah, these are unintended consequences that now we look at and be like, oh man, yeah, you know, there's no way that we would ever let the government or a government contractor get away with such horrible atrocities. But back then, it was like, look, you know what? We are trying to maintain our our superiority over the rest of the world. If this is the only way we can do it, then hey, you know, can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, right? So, but here we have a character who's saying, okay, look, yeah, you broke the eggs, you made the omelet, and now somebody's going to eat that damn omelet. So, hey, look, this is, you know, this is what happens when you don't properly scramble, people, right? You properly scramble your eggs, or else, you know, indigestion heartburn, hypnosis, and people jumping out of the window with bomb vests on and stuff.
So fix your eggs right, folks. Pay attention. Corrie, what about you? Thoughts on Ivchenko and Leviathan?
Yeah, I mean, I want to springboard right off what Dawn was saying, and Peggy totally calls Howard out on this. She says something along the lines of, you were so focused on creating your inventions, you didn't stop to consider whether you should to begin with, right? And her and Jarvis have the conversation after the vault is broken into, and she's like, why did Howard have all these super dangerous, like, why did he even make them in the first place? So she starts holding him accountable, and she's like, you are responsible for whatever you create, whether or not you use it, you created it. It's like having a child. You may not have been there when the birthday party fight went down and the cake was everywhere, but you are still responsible for what happened at that birthday party. And you have to pay for the damages, right? And we see this when they have the argument about Steve's blood. And she realizes he's been kind of playing her, and she asks him, what's in the vial, Howard? What's in the vial? He says Steve's blood, and she slaps or punches him. I think she punches him. And they have this conversation where she says, "You are always looking for spare change. You're like a snake going into all the open crevices, trying to find spare change, and then you cry when you're bit." And she's just disgusted at his sort of lack of morality and how if he can make a buck somewhere, he'll do it. And so we see again with Howard's arc how he starts to take responsibility, and that's what Ivchenko uses to manipulate him, right? What's your greatest regret? And his greatest regret is not finding Steve. They left, and they had a signal, but they weren't sure, and then they left that project. He went to work on other things. And so now we have Howard trying to make things right. He's like, I want to make things right. I know I messed up, very much, similar to Tony's arc of we've got all these weapons that we've made. I want to go cancel the whole company because I can't live with myself if I'm making weapons that are being used to destroy other people. So we have that kind of morality question, and that's what allows Ivchenko to manipulate Howard, and that's why he ends up in a plane heading to New York to bomb the city with a neurotoxin that's going to cause complete havoc and destroy Howard's reputation and his family name. So I thought, yeah, exactly. Peggy calls him out on that. Another thing that I noticed and I really liked they did is that the doctor gets away with everything he gets away with because of the authority barriers that are set up at the SSR. Because the boss is the boss. Because Thompson thinks he's better than everybody else. The little warning signs that are there go by unnoticed. Like there was an agent, I don't even remember his name, who was barely in the episode. And he says to Thompson, isn't it weird that Julie's spending all that time with the doctor? Shouldn't we, and Thompson's like, hey buddy, you're a level 1 agent, go file your papers, the chief's doing important stuff, let it go, right? And then he ends up being hypnotized, manipulated, because the doctor picks up on what does he want most, and that's to be noticed, to be valued. And so he tells him this lie of, oh, if you want to be valued, if you want to prove your worth to the SSR, you're going to go do this, and you're going to go to the bar, take a drink, and then you're going to step right in front of a truck or a vehicle and get killed. And then Thompson does the exact same thing, where he's looking at it and going, okay, this is weird, and he tries to talk to Julie about, hey, I don't think this is a great idea, and Julie brushes him aside. And so we have these like layers of authority that are blocking any sort of early warning signs from getting through, because if you aren't the top honcho, whatever you're observing isn't important. And so not only is Peggy seeing the downside of this, where she's not being permitted to do what she'd like to do to help out with with the mission is that the lower level male agents are also kind of being shoved to the corner, shoved to the side. And it's such a great contrast to what we see Phil doing with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where he's like, hey, the little guy is important. Like episode 1, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's all about Mike Peterson. It's like, I know you're a good guy. I know you're you've fallen on rough times. I believe in you. It's like the little person matters. And so it's such a different approach.
Well, it sets up kind of, again, that nice dynamic as you have Peggy trying to fight to overcome this system while the villains against her are using that system to their most advantage to either disguise or infiltrate or obscure their intent. So, I mean, in that way, it is kind of a perfect, antagonist, protagonist setup. They're both fighting events, working within an environment that each one is adapting to differently.
Okay. Howling Commandos. We didn't discuss this.
We did not discuss Howling Commandos. Real quick, let's get into those Howling Commandos and our brief little shot. We did get a little bit of Dum Dum Dugan showing up. We got a little bit of our classic characters. It was only one shot, but that was the main point that everyone else got to see, or at least Jack Thompson. But the people that fought with Peggy respect her a heck of a lot more. So I'll throw that out if anybody who wants to jump in on that.
I just liked some of the quotes we got from that episode. Some Dugan comes in, she's like, woohoo! She's like, stop woohooing and help! And how even the Howling Commandos are susceptible to the stereotypes of the time. They see a little girl and they're like, oh, she's a little girl, she's innocent, she can't hurt anybody, let's be kind to her. And then one gets shot and the other gets knifed in the leg.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, and then I'll let somebody else talk. But I love that this episode allows us to see Peggy the way she should always be seen. The Howling Commander shows up. The only reason she gets on that mission is because she makes an offer that the guys all assume is impossible. They're like, oh yeah, well, if you can get the Howling Commandos on the team, then you can go on the mission. And he calls them up and he's like, okay, so we're going on the mission and the drop site should be here and everybody, let's go. And when her team meets the Howling Commandos, their response is, oh my word, you worked with Captain America, asking all these questions. And I love Dum Dum in that scene because he basically is like, you idiots. Peggy Carter spent more time with Captain America than we did. She was here with us. Ask her. She knows him better than we do.
And the fact they're so surprised that she could get him when they know that she fought with them.
Yeah. And I love how it's just this automatic brother sister camaraderie. She shows up and they're just all excited. Peggy, and they want to call her Miss Britain or something.
Miss Union Jack.
Miss Union Jack. Forget it. And I also love that tiny little moment of Dum Dum and her in the back of the transport vehicle. And she says, I don't even remember the line, but it's a sort of vague line. And he looks over at her and his only response is, yeah, I miss him too.
Yeah.
So they don't even have to speak. Dum Dum just knows she's thinking about Steve, and there's just this camaraderie there and this respect there. And I was like, man, I wish we could have 15 more episodes of just Peggy and the Howling Commander.
Well, I think that's one thing too. Is you get Neil McDonough in there. You can have him just passing past the camera, and it's already yeah. He's just one of those actors that you always love to see. Don, you got any Howling Commando thoughts, reflections, comments?
The key. Oh,
I was wondering what you were holding that face for. Damn, man, that's dedication. I love it.
Yeah, man, that was just absolutely hilarious at the end of the one shot. He's just sitting there with the mug. He's just like, I was like, It's called a bikini. Bikini.
And he assumes that Howard invented it.
Yeah, he was like, did you invent it? No, the French did.
And it's not even a modern bikini. Like it's like shorts and a like full top. But that was scandalous for the 40s.
Yeah, so look, it's great seeing the Howling Commandos. It wasn't the full cast or the all the originals that we got, but they, Dum Dum Dugan and anybody else makes Howling Commandos all good.
Yeah.
Although the one knock I do have on Neil McDonough's performance is his Wahoo. The Wahoo to me sounds very forced.
Okay.
It does like I'd imagine it more like almost like a cowboy saying Wahoo.
Yeah.
That's what I imagine whenever I would read the old Nick Fury comics. So when I heard him say it in Captain America the first time, it was like, this is a little odd. And then when he says it again in Agent Carter, I'm like, I guess that's going to be his version of it, but never how it sounded in my head. So, but look, it's the Howling Commandos. What is there not to like about them? Like I said, it was a modified version of the cast that we got in Captain America and also in season 2 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But it also goes to show that even in the comic books, there's kind of a rotating cast as to who's part of the Howling Commandos, and they've kept up with that kind of tradition here. So I liked it, and yeah, you know what, Corey, I wish we could have gotten something with Peggy and the Howling Commandos as well. I'm honestly surprised that they didn't try to do a Howling Commandos TV show. Like with all of the things that have been announced as far as Marvel television has been concerned, especially now where it's supposed to all be in-house. Like I understand they want to connect to the movies, but the TV shows are cherished by the fans. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't get 7 seasons if it didn't have enough support. And honestly speaking, I think that Agent Carter could have definitely went on for more seasons, and they could have gotten, I think they probably could have gotten the cast of characters from Howling Commandos. Even if it would have been a rotational cast, they could have put together a Howling Commandos show that would have worked.
It could have been could have been the sort of reflection of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Peggy and the Howling Commandos. That's great.
Yeah. By the way, to me, there's a special kind of comedy scene about that mid-credit scene in the one shot with Dum Dum Dugan in bikinis. I don't know if you guys knew that Neil McDonough has a contract clause. You will never see him kiss a woman on screen. It's in his contract. He doesn't believe in it. He is dedicated to his wife.
Ooh.
And so he feels that it is wrong when he's married to kiss another woman. So you never see him smooching on screen. So the fact that actor is there lifted over bikinis to me is just kind of adds a real interesting extra layer of quality to him. I mean, look, the guy is amazing, and this can prove that you don't need to be romantic to be a prolific actor, considering how much this guy works. But it's just a fun little, just a little bit of side note there. Rob, do you have any Howling Commando insights or thoughts you want to share with us before we close things up?
To be honest with you, no, I don't.
No, we're good.
I don't. No, everybody's been good. I'm only saying that. I mean, I could look. We need a whole another show to talk about all this stuff in season 1. Because I mean, we didn't even get into like episode to episodes.
Oh, I know. We're at 2.5 hours. barely touched on things.
So I mean, for me, it's like this is the last day of my vacation. Okay, so I'm good at talking about Commandos. I think everybody else did a really good job.
All right, thanks, Rob. All right, well, again, while I think we've covered everything, there's also so much more that we could be covering from an episode to episode. Bits of the story arc, wonderful character bits, cameos. I mean, you guys have gone into in your reviews so many of the great actors that have shown up in this. People that have been around forever. I've got a list here, and that would take another 20 minutes to just partially even go through. Look, this is an awesome show. Why people didn't watch it as much as you know, I'm sure ABC had hoped for. It seems to be suffering a lot of those bits that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ran into. Is Marvel movies were on the big screen and trying to tell the stories on the small screen for some reason just didn't grab people. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is, especially with Disney Plus holding on to everything, they don't have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. yet, but it'll get over there as soon as the Netflix agreement closes out. There is so much to dive into. There is so much story. There is so many things that can be explored. And it's great that we have a medium now where people that missed it before can come back and watch it again, can re-experience, can see these characters, can be inspired by Peggy's. And you know, as mentioned earlier on, this is a great show for young women to watch. You need to see, representation is important because people need to see what they want out there and people they identify with in those roles. And I think that's what is so important about Peggy Carter and how it was presented and how the story is told here. Are there little flaws, little issues, little things? None of that matters. What matters is you have an excellent character that does the right thing and has a great cast of characters that supports them and an arc that is realistic and identifiable with people at a young age and people that are in the world today right now, trying to push back those glass ceilings and limitations. And I think the more we see things like that, the more we have that representation, the more that is going to inspire people to become better, to increase, to make our world a better place. And damn if we don't need that right now. The principles of voting, democracy, speech, equality, equity as well. That's what Captain America is about. That's what Peggy Carter is about. And that is why we love them as heroes. So, with that said, so much more to go into, and I know you want to hear more, so you can go over and watch this guy's reviews. This girl right here, because they're awesome, and they have so much more time to dive into each and every episode. But for now, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things off. So any final thoughts, and then let people know where they can find you? Let's kick things off with you, Rob.
All right. I think I'll just end it by saying that, like, listening to everybody talk about this, I feel like the first season, so much of it, not just Peggy Carter, but I feel like a lot of this is the identity of people after World War II. What do you do when the conflict is over? What do you do when the thing that you were sacrificing, time away from your loved ones to save the world from the Nazis, and now that it's over, you go home and the men have certain expectations and the women have certain expectations and all these. But for our characters, it's how do you move on from the war? How does Peggy move on from Cap? Can she move on from Cap? What is her identity without these things? And I think a lot of that really gets answered here in season 1. I think we get pretty much a great jumping off point. So when season 2 starts, everybody has mostly grown and I'm excited to talk more about season 2 with Corrie on my channel, and I can't wait to get to talk about it with you guys in March. But other than that, I think that's pretty much how I want to. My final point on it is identity and how all these characters, by the end of it, have found some kind of uh, thing that was missing. A lot of these characters have a better direction. Maybe not guys like Thompson who did learn things and chose to ignore them, but most everybody else, and Dooley, who unfortunately learned his lesson way too late. I think everybody here is got a good jumping off point to where they are going to be for the rest of their lives now. But then we see in season 2, there's lots more surprises to come, especially with a new location. So we'll talk about that in March. But other than that, I guess I'm going to just say that we cover Agent Carter on my channel on Thursdays. We're doing season 2. Monday or Tuesdays, we got The Expanse, and starting this Friday, we're talking about WandaVision on the channel. So keep a lookout for that.
Excellent. Don, any final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, listen, Agent Carter season 1, loved it the first time around, loved it on the rewatch. So glad to be doing this with you guys. Can't wait to do season 2. I'm probably gonna watch season 2 twice before we actually have our review. Who knows? Maybe by then I'll have some even better hats in the background. Yeah, and listen, you guys can find me on YouTube at Adon of Ice and Fire, and also look for me on Twitter at IDonWillie. It's IDonWilli. Where hey, my last tweet actually got a like from Ice-T, so awesome. And yeah, I guess Agent Corrie, take it away.
Yes. So you can find me on YouTube or Facebook at Soothing Scriptures, and the search handle is at Biblical Bliss. You just type that in Google, it pops up right away. Or my website, Literature with Charm, because I'm an author. That's where you can find me. Last thought, I guess, would be that season 1 shows us that everyone can improve and get better. Like everybody has some kind of failing somewhere, so you can go from being a Jack Thompson jerk and being, improving. Like, I would hope that at some point Jack would become a decent human being, but everybody on the show improves and learns and grows, and I think that's one of the things to keep in mind when you're looking at a show that is a historical show and is based on events that actually happened. It's very easy to be here in the 2020 and look back and be like, oh, well, how could people be so stupid in the 1940s to do this, that, or whatever? But in that time period, that was the norm for them. So anybody who challenged that had to be really spectacular and unique in that they were thinking in that way. And you can just transport that into our time now. What do we assume is normal now that 20 years later, people are going to go, I can't believe they did that or said that or thought that. So I guess take a message of hope from this, that everybody can improve over time. You learn and you become better. Yeah, and even Peggy became better, because at the beginning of the episode, she was telling Jarvis, she said, they're not going to respect you. And she's like, I will make them recognize my value. And in the end of the season 1, she tells Souza, I don't care if I get a congressional honor. I don't care. It doesn't matter what everyone thinks about me. I know my value. So she goes from, I want them to value me, to, I know I am valuable. I know that myself. So I don't need anyone else telling me. So I thought, if Peggy can improve, from where she is already at the beginning. We can all improve somehow. And yeah, and if someone around you is kind of down in the dumps, just pull a Peggy to a Howard and ask, why is your mustache so sad?
That is a beautiful end note right there. I'm D. You're watching D's Reviews. You can catch us here every month as we pour through reviews of Agent Carter and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 3 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. coming up next week. I am off for my usual Expanse visits over at Enchantment of Eternity this week. I have to journey across country. I may have some very interesting stories to tell all of you when I get back. But for now, thank you to everyone who joined us in the chat. Thank you to everyone who is joining us in the archives. Thank you to my whole panel of fans. The show is not the same without you. You make everything worthwhile here. And I appreciate all of you guys being here and everyone watching this on the archives. Thank you so much. I am D, and we are out of here. We'll catch you all next month. Take care, and bye-bye.